Welcome, everyone. This is episode 22 of They Might Be Self-Aware. I am Hunter Powers, joined by the one, the only, the
Daniel Bishop.
Hey, Daniel, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Well, in today's episode, there's a lot of things, but it's going to start with a eulogy for my rabbit R1.
Is Apple Vision Pro next? Let's talk about its dusty present and the potentially crisp future.
We'll also talk about the Oculus Quest, who may have found its purpose with Swedish furniture. Could it be a match made in Sweden?
Also, the Tesla FSD. Was it worth the free trial that they gave me?
And in self-driving car news, Waymo apparently just driving way off, but at least you can't get a ticket if there's no driver involved.
An East versus West showdown for the future. Does it matter who pulls the trigger when AI is involved?
Well, AI has been pulling a lot of triggers recently as it fired a room full of 60 riders.
Hopefully not with robots with machine guns on top. And lastly, we're going to discuss my favorite, dogs. Can they talk? Can we make them talk? Should we make them talk? Do they want to talk?
That and more on our journey towards self-awareness. Because you are listening to...
They might be self-aware.
If we could take a moment of silence for the Rabbit R1.
Why silence?
Well, it bricked itself.
Oh.
I kind of only used it maybe twice, like when I first got it. Mm-hmm. And then we talked about it a little bit on one episode. Right. And then I think maybe 2 weeks later, I read about an update. And so I turned it on and let it update itself.
Okay.
And then turned it back off. And then I think it was last week, I was like, hey, I wonder if there's any updates. So I went, I turned it back on. It updated. And now it won't connect to Wi-Fi anymore. And there's no hard reset thing on it. And the only way to update it is via Wi-Fi. But it will not connect via Wi-Fi. There's other people talking about this on Reddit, by the way. And I emailed their support. And they said thank you for letting them know, and they're looking into it. But yeah.
So the future was here, and now it's gone. You had the future was in here, the palm of your hand,
and it sort of self-destructed when it ate its own Wi-Fi. It still looks cool, and maybe that's the only thing it was ever actually worth in the first place. So it can go back to the shelf, right about there or something. And
a little museum of failed AI gadgets.
In theory, there's nothing online about, again, how do you hard reset it? You can reset the AI. So the how do you hard reset it online is log into your account on their website, and you can basically schedule it to be reset. But in order for it to receive that instruction, it has to be able to connect to the server. And because it can't get on Wi-Fi, it can't connect to the server.
Well, that's no good. Is it sitting next to your used just as much Apple Vision Pro?
So it's true that I use the Apple Vision Pro a lot less today than when I got it. I have been playing. They are releasing a new version of the operating system. They announced it back at WWDC, and at WWDC they dropped the beta of V2 of, I think it's called Reality OS or something like that. I did download that. It has a new environment that's very pretty sitting on a beach. It doesn't have this feature yet, but it's going to support larger monitor resolutions. Because again, that's the primary thing that I used it for. I liked working in the virtual environment. So I will try it again when that happens. I did recently go on some very long international flights, 9-10 hour flights. And I brought it with me with the hypothesis, and I loaded it up with movies that all right, I'm going to sit by my virtual beach and watch some movies, but I felt self-conscious. I did take it out for 2 seconds, and then I was like, no, I'm not going to do this, and I just put it right back in the bag.
You didn't use it on the plane? I would have absolutely done so, at least just to see what it was like.
I did that, right? Like I put it on and like it really is good, but I still felt too self-conscious and watched just on the little screen on the TV in front of me.
Really?
Yeah.
I did a flight on, I think it was the Quest either 1 or 2, and it made the flight just not a flight. I just teleported to the place that I was going to and happened to be in a nice virtual space in the meantime. I really do think that a huge potential selling point for the Vision Pro and the Quest 3 and so on is, what if you're going to be traveling and you're not the one doing the driving?
I definitely could see a future where airlines offer you a headset. I mean, for the longest time, you would have to like buy the headphones in order to watch the movie. I guess, remember, it used to be like the TV that like came down in the center of the aisle, and then finally they moved into the heads there, the headrests, and now they're pretty much always on the back, or you're just watching on your phone. But I could see a thing where they walk around with a cart of headsets to test the market, and that then Hunter can feel a little self-conscious, a little less self-conscious about putting his headset on.
You're describing like on flights where occasionally there's like an air marshal that's just, sitting on the flight and you don't know, but he's got a gun just in case something goes wrong or whatever it is. You're saying that Apple needs to plant people on planes who aren't really traveling from place to place. They're just there to normalize wearing this headset in public.
Yes. And there's been rumors of them doing similar things to that before. And I've never seen anything confirmed.
It's guerrilla marketing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to say even around the Apple Vision, when it first came out, there were a number of fashionistas wearing these things. And it was a little
we
perplexing.
Talked about one of those.
Yeah.
They were like at a cafe.
And so, yes. Yeah. Get it out there. And then, get those shots into the news. This is an obvious PR strategy that they should employ. Oh, more and more models sitting in first class are wearing their Apple Vision Pros on international flights, and the next day, all of the nerds we're all there just wearing our headsets.
I would be just
cool
like
now.
Them. Yeah, I found a new use for my VR headset. Ooh. I was using it literally yesterday for the first time in about 2 months, but that's besides the point. The point is that I used it, and it's a good use.
What did you do?
So I think you and I have discussed, if not necessarily on the podcast, the idea of like, I'm doing dishes, floating YouTube video in front of it. I could set up a laptop or something, but I don't want it next to the water, or it's like on top of a drying rack and it's taking up space, or it's right next to the sink. So instead of that, headset, YouTube, great. Something else on YouTube that I was using yesterday. I was putting together a piece of IKEA furniture, and I loaded up in the browser, floating in space with the pass-through on in front of me, the assembly video from IKEA. Mm-hmm. Or, there are IKEA videos. I think I actually watched somebody else's. But the point is, that is an amazing use of the technology, because on the Quest 3, it's not as good as the Vision Pro. I tried that out, and boy, it was good. The Quest 3, good enough pass-through to be like, I'm in my house and I can see at a reasonable fidelity, and I can like find the screw and the depth perception is right to, use tools. I was using tools in real life with a VR headset on, like hammer. I didn't once hit my thumb. All the while being able to put the tools down without having to take my headset off, without having to reach over and like touch a thing, just like swipe. I wasn't swiping. I think I was like double tapping on the left side of the YouTube pane or something like that. Well, not something like that. That's what I did. But the point is, I didn't have to like leave the sort of space that I was in, literally or figuratively, to scrub backward or to move forward or pause while I did the thing that took me longer than the guy in the video. I think that that's like one of the obvious and good, obvious games. Games are one of the big sellers of like the Quest 3. For some reason, the Vision Pro wasn't too bullish on that to begin with. I know they've got some now. But like, walkthrough videos, or we've seen the like telepresence, like microsurgery type things being used. Those are, I think, some of the best uses of this technology. It's a productivity enhancer. Not all the time, certainly not all use cases, but maybe that's what the Vision Pro folks are actually going for, is let's make this a productivity enhancer. You said I can work on my screen in front of me, kind of wherever it needs to be. I can watch instruction YouTube videos, or a surgeon can see the robot camera without having to look way over here while they're working on it. I liked that. And I'm glad to always find more uses for this thing that is amazing that I never really use.
Yes. So on the Quest side, and I still play with my Quest every now and then as well, they've been continuing to release new features, and they've also been taking some of the features from the Apple Vision Pro. So they've improved the pass-through. I don't know if you've noticed at all, but it is increasingly getting better, especially if you're like looking at your hands and you're getting close to your face. You see less of that sort of like double vision effect.
Wobbly, yeah. It's still there, but it's not as bad as it used to be.
The latest release, I think, is the V67. They started introducing the same kind of multitasking windows that you have in Apple Vision Pro, where you just have these windows and you can put them wherever you want in your world. So similar to your sort of, or enhancing on your example, where I've got my YouTube video up here, and then you can have another one with the PDF manual, etc. Mm-hmm. They've also been improving their browser experience, especially in supporting some of the content encrypted videos. They've started suggesting that, like, hey, if you're going to watch Netflix, maybe just go to Netflix in the browser. They have a Netflix app, unlike Apple, but the browser now supports full 4K video streaming as an additional improvement on the Quest side. And yeah, games suck on Apple Vision Pro. I downloaded
there are no controllers.
Yeah, that's the problem. I downloaded a Job Simulator. I'm guessing you've played it. It's
a great game.
It's a great game.
It's a very good
for
showcase of the fun you can have in VR.
In fact, I want to know how long it's been around. VR Job Simulator. It's got a Wikipedia or something. Maybe not. Release date 2016. Okay, so 8 years.
A bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is like Oculus Dev Kit 1 or 2. Like, it was back in those days.
Yes. And I don't know. I guess if people aren't familiar, it's tongue-in-cheek. It started as just like you're sitting at a cubicle and you have this robot that is clearly your boss giving you tasks to do. That was very similar to the robot from Portal, at least to me.
Right. It's like a future where humans don't do anything anymore. And so this is a blast from the past where you got to be office worker and, okay, make this copy and it's a good way to show, like, I can pick things up in VR and pour something into something else. And
so they released this game on the Apple Vision Pro, whatever, $6,000 self-contained VR headset. And I downloaded it it wasn't cheap either. It was maybe like, I should know what it was. I feel like it was $20. Maybe it was only $10, but it felt like a $20 dagger to the heart. And it just sucks. First off, they didn't improve any of the graphical assets. I'd suggest since the 2016 release. I was expecting to see some like super crisp imagery at a minimum. I was like, all right, we're going to see. Again, it has a very cartoony style. I wasn't expecting the style to have changed. I was just expecting higher resolution assets. It is the same resolution assets. It looks no different. I also have it on the Quest. It looks no different than it looks on the Quest. But the hand tracking is horrible. And so the whole premise of the game is you're in this office, you're picking things up, you're completing tasks, and it's all about the hand tracking.
Right. Or controller tracking.
And maybe it actually is really impressive because there are no controllers. But in comparison to using it on the Quest where you have a controller in your hand and it tracks your hand more or less perfectly, it's horrible. It's horrible. It's like no good. And this is after Apple released a significant update to the hand tracking, which supposedly improved it a lot. And that was one of my motivations. I saw that the release notes, we've improved hand tracking a whole lot. I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to go and try out Job Simulator. Went in and downloaded. No good.
Mm-hmm.
And again, maybe it's actually incredibly good, but it just shows that at this point in the game, you still need to have a controller for any or the vast majority of all gaming experiences.
Now, outside of games, back to like useful cases for it. Have you taken more videos with the Vision Pro to relive memories of, that time I was at the beach or watching planes at the airport or whatever?
So I haven't taken videos while wearing the Apple Vision Pro, which you can do. But I have taken more videos and panoramic photos on my phone for the purposes of later reliving them. I haven't relived them, but
you could.
I do think now, and it's not a common thing, but it has come up a few times where I think, all right. And so when you take a video on your iPhone intended for the Vision world, you have to take it horizontal. You can't take it vertical, and it looks like you're taking it through a longer lens, meaning it looks like it's zoomed in a fair amount. And I'd suggest probably most people, when they're taking videos, their default lens is a fairly wide lens. So it's
right.
and most people are taking them from a vertical orientation. So the point being that it's a little disorientating when you're like, hey, I'd like to capture this moment for my VR, and then I have to like zoom in a whole bunch and flip to horizontal and take it. So it's a little awkward, but I have taken those. And then panoramas are something that are pretty incredible in VR, because you get back to when you view them, you get a sense of being there and being able to look around and actually like look into details. And I felt like I've noticed a lot that I didn't notice when I was taking the panoramics. When I find myself in a really incredible place, I will often now capture the panorama with the intention of one day spending 10 seconds looking at it in VR.
So the camera modules on the iPhone are really close together, closer than a human's eyes are.
True.
Do you think it's zooming in to the point where it is effectively as if your eyes were that far apart, like drawing the line toward infinity or what have you? Because the idea is when you load this thing up, that it looks not like your eyes are this close together, but that they're a normal amount of distance
presumably apart. It's a good guess.
Yeah.
So
I don't have a VR camera. I don't think anyone has a VR camera, but anyone. I think nearly nobody has a VR camera. I was puzzled just enough about this to look online, and your Canons and so on do make lenses that like fit onto, the real, like the actual camera. It's not like a phone camera. I have a removable lens type camera, and they look goofy. It's got the two sort of lenses, and then I guess it combines onto the one sensor or whatever. But if VR is going to get really big, surely we need to have all of our cameras have two probably eye width apart cameras in the future. Right? If this is if Meta, if Apple, if whoever are really making push for AR and VR and whatever Apple is calling it are going to be are they calling it AR like Apple Reality? What are they calling it again?
Spatial computing?
Spatial computing. That's right. Yeah, it's not even something reality. So if spatial computing and AR and so on are going to be the future, everyone's going to need to be able to create content with it. And so we're going to need to have everybody having those cameras. But
I mean,
those two things aren't really coming together yet.
Well, or everybody kind of already does have the camera because Apple's figured out how to do it to some degree on the iPhone, and they would arguably just continue that. But
that's not a VR first solution. That's you have to be way zoomed in on your video.
Sure, but it evolves over time. If they view it as the future, they have the ability to keep making it better and better, and to the point where every video you capture, doesn't matter the orientation. I mean, that's where they do it. Like Apple controls the market. So if they want everyone to have a VR camera, it couldn't be easier for them to figure out.
We're all going to have one.
To make sure that we all have one. It just becomes a standard feature. And then all of a sudden, everyone has a 3D VR camera. I don't know, the iPhone already has cameras on both sides.
Yeah, just something that I think about sometimes.
I guess before we move on, there's been some rumblings in the news in the same area that Zuckerberg has been demoing his AR glasses that are actually AR glasses, where you can, you can see through them without them being turned on, and they project holograms into the world. And people who've seen it have said like it's super impressive.
Give me Star Wars holograms. I literally don't want it to look realistic. I don't want you floating in mid-space in front of me. I want to hear the hologram noise, and you can see the kind of like lines in the blue light. Give me that. That's what I want. I will absolutely buy whoever makes that available first. But it's sort of like the AI art versus not AI art debate, where I think people want to know that it's not real to a certain degree. You want it to look realistic and know it's not real. So, this is very good AI art. I'm looking at the thing. Okay, it's cryptographically signed, etc. The things that we've talked about before. Maybe for like telepresence, I've seen a couple of things where it's supposed to be very holographic, and it's like a telephone booth that you can have in your office, and like a person is basically, I don't know what tricks they're doing with the light to make it look like that, but supposedly it's like person in a box, like a huge real life Barbie box, but
for some reason it's
your
Howie Mandel
in
a lot in the box. I don't know why.
And I think that that's very cool, but if it's going to be like an AR goggles type thing, I don't know. Do I really want to invite my coworkers into my house, or does it need to be a cartoonish avatar or a Star Wars style hologram or a VR chat? They're a giant talking cloud or whatever it ends up being. What's your opinion on this? Would you rather have AR glasses where it looks like I'm in your living room with you, or it's an avatar of me in the living room with you?
I mean, I guess I'd rather have true photorealism than an avatar, but I do think there's a lot of value in your point that like we're going to be a long way to true photorealism. So why not adopt a highly stylized approach that is processor efficient in the meantime, as well as kind of like a branding thing. So why don't you do the Star Wars quality holograms and make that your brand identity and keep making those better, and rather than trying to make a bad photorealistic avatar. Now, at the same time, like we saw who was it? It was Zuckerberg and the podcaster did the photorealistic interview. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, and that did look really good. So I think there's probably there's a space for that photorealistic telepresence. I think that's more for work. I don't know. Like I'm trying to imagine I invited my parents over for dinner, and it's a really sad scene where we see them at their house having dinner, and there's just like a taped off QR code delineated space where I am, and then I'm in my house and I've got my little delineated space for where they are. Is that heartwarming, or is that horrible and dystopian? Can it be both?
I mean, I don't think it's horrible and dystopian, but the question is, I've had FaceTime conversations with my parents.
It's worse if they're not actually on the other end of the line. And then I'm just like, I'm having dinner with well, no, maybe that could be really sweet if, they'd tragically passed or something.
Oh, well, now I'm having dinner with my dead parents. That's
right,
a little,
right. So again,
dystopian.
Is that now getting into the horribly dystopian or the heartwarming side of things? Probably more the former.
I mean, I guess it's only dystopian if it's done in place of, so I'm having dinner with my virtual parents, but my parents also just live. They live 20 minutes away, but instead I'll take their virtual counterparts and I'll have dinner with them. And so I have dinner at the family table, but the entire family is really just AI agents impersonating my family. That's dystopian. If they have passed on and it's my birthday and I put them there, again, that's a little more heartwarming. So I guess the degree to which it replaces real relationships is problematic. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's necessarily problematic if it's not replacing the real relationship. If you then somehow become kind of addicted to that version of reality, and so you're not going outside because you're reliving your 7th birthday over and over again. Yeah, that's just an episode of a TV show.
We're getting into the Futurama "don't date robots" sort of space there, I think.
Yeah, but at least I guess our robots can drive us home from places.
Well, we're not there yet. They're really making a push for it. I think Arizona, California, maybe a couple of other states have started saying, okay, Waymo, you're allowed to do this fully autonomously. There's nobody behind the wheel. People get in the back and they'll get where they're going.
I know I've asked you before, would you ride in one of these fully autonomous taxis? I don't remember what you said, though. Was it a yes or no? I feel like you were a no.
I'm looking at this headline and I know what my current answer is. I think it was know, but I had, we talk about what is the threshold of when are you willing. I'm, especially after having been given access for a month to the Tesla not full self-driving, FSD, totally separate thing. I don't know if I mentioned this. I turned it off before the free month was up. I got fed up with it. It wasn't good. I was really entertaining the idea for a while. Like, I'll use it. I'll hit the little button after to give them feedback of the thing that it screwed up. They got their training data out of me. I turned it off. I'll just take that auto steer beta or whatever the level that comes with the car, where like it'll keep the lane and keep the appropriate speed. That I love. It
how much better?
Almost never screws that up.
Does it need
Nearly
to get for
never.
You? 10% better? 20% better? 100% better?
What, the FSD?
Yeah. What
no,
was the
not
gap?
better. Worse. Actively worse.
No. How much better does it need to get before you're sold on it? Like, how big of this is the gap?
So the first couple of months that I had the Model 3, I'm not going to quite say death grip, but like really, like I'm more vigilant than I am when driving when I turned on the autopilot.
Okay.
These days, I know where it's not going to be good. Literally where in certain places in my city, or if it's like a new kind of situation, I know to be more vigilant. But the vigilance never really goes above my baseline I'm actually driving. At first, I was like really I was expecting it to just veer into oncoming traffic at any time. And it never does that. Sometimes it'll turn off. And when I say sometimes, I mean like 0.1% of it, like barely
It never
ever.
turns into oncoming traffic?
I've never had the auto steer thing that you don't have to pay for. That's never been like time to, never's done that. At least a half dozen times, almost certainly more, the FSD would have got me into trouble. Maybe it would have hit the brakes with like just enough time to spare something. But like if it went at the time that I took over control, the course that it was on would have led to danger multiple times. So yank the steering wheel off or hit the switch, whatever it was, to please don't be on FSD anymore. I don't know what percentage, but I do know in the situations that I would be using it, it needs to be at least as solid as autopilot is, because I feel like autopilot is a mature product. It is safe. I trust it. I would not fall asleep behind the wheel and let it drive me forever. It also has a camera in the cabin to like check for that, and it'll turn it off. But even if it didn't, if they said, you're allowed to go to sleep, Daniel, I'm not at that point yet, for sure. And I'm not at I'll hold on a conversation looking off to the side, letting it, steer a 2-ton, however much it weighs, vehicle down without me like even looking. I don't trust it that much. I do trust it I don't have to give it as much attention as I ordinarily would be giving the road when driving. With that, I keep my hands on the wheel. I do what I'm supposed to, but like I don't need to. Once we're at that point for all of the stuff FSD is supposed to do, sure, then. But we're nowhere near there yet, and that's just Tesla. Waymo is at the point, legally speaking, allegedly, where there's nobody up front. Maybe there isn't even a steering wheel. I saw the video for this. I don't remember if it. Okay, great. But there's nobody up there. There's just somebody in the back. And, well, you go ahead. You tell everyone.
Well, I guess, and this has happened before, but it's happened again, that the cars do break the law from time to time, and they do get pulled over. In this instance, the Waymo vehicle turned into oncoming traffic. It was a confusing, we'll call it, I think intersection is the wrong term, but I don't know, situation where there was a construction zone, and it had to navigate around, and it improperly read the situation and ended up turning into oncoming traffic. And it
was wrong, and then it committed to being wrong, and just, well, now I go down this road.
And a police officer pulled it over, and it did indeed pull over. And
I was surprised by that, by the way.
I guess I've seen videos before of them getting pulled over.
Okay. That should be a whole genre of YouTube videos, just autonomous vehicles being pulled over.
Yeah, I've seen them refusing. The ones where I saw refusing were when we were having a lot of protests and like sort of like instantaneous road closures. And so like the cars coming down, like the cops in the middle of the road, like stop. And it's just like trying to drive around the cop and like trying to get it. And the cop can't Cop's not used to dealing with a car without a human in it, so
there's no driver to threaten.
Yeah,
with
there's
bodily
no
violence.
there's no one that can tase and drop kick and shoot. So what is the cop supposed to do? Taking all.
There's always the tires.
It's useful tools away.
Yep.
But anyway,
maybe they should start taking blankets to just like throw over the big spinning thing up top. I bet that would stop them.
Or worse, maybe if it doesn't stop and now you just covered its eyes and I'm blind.
I'm blind and I must drive.
Yes.
There's a fun title. I am blind and I must drive.
So in this situation, the cop successfully pulls over the Waymo vehicle that had been driving in the wrong lane. It pulls over and the cop approaches the vehicle and indeed there is no driver. The window rolls down.
Right.
And someone
connected
from
to like a call center.
Yeah, first they have to wait to be connected to a call center. You get here like hold music.
I think it even said like, please wait while we connect you to. Yeah.
There's a little girl.
Some
from
other
EP22.
pedestrian comes over. He wants to see what's going on.
Hello, this is driver services. How may I help you?
The wrong way, man.
So the cop talks with their customer support after a brief on hold and lets them know what's been happening. But the cop can't charge them with anyone because there's no human.
There's no person to give a ticket to. Does Waymo get the ticket?
No.
Much more importantly, you and I have to have driver's licenses to drive legally.
Yeah.
Does Citizens United type stuff, etc. Like corporations are basically people, whether you like that or not, in America right now. Does Waymo, the company, have a driver's license?
I don't believe so, but
for
my understanding is
car to be driving. Does each if 10 cars get tickets, a person gets tickets, they get points on their license, X number of points. You have to do like remedial classes, and eventually like you'll get your license revoked. What happens when 50 Waymo cars, 100 Waymo cars, the same Waymo car 10 times, whatever? Like, what's the combination of things where that car's not allowed to drive anymore, or all of them aren't allowed to anymore? I don't think we have an answer. Like, legally speaking, this is totally uncharted territory. Well, maybe not totally. There's presumably been some sort of legal process to get these things on the road. But how do we slap them on the wrist? What does that look like?
Well, my understanding is that, they're effectively bribing the local government in order to get access. And they're paying a lot of money to get a special license to put these vehicles on the car in a fixed area, covered by this local government. Right. So I guess I might suggest that if you wanted to sue someone, you'd sue that local government, right? You're in that opposing lane in the Waymo car. Obviously you're going to go after Waymo, but you probably also go after that local government who agreed to have
allowed to,
this vehicle without any human in it, that deemed it safe and put you in harm's way.
Can you, if you're going to start suing people because you got into a wreck, running into a Waymo going the wrong way or something, not to say that happened here, it was just going the wrong way, didn't hit anyone.
Yeah.
If I'm in a car and then like Waymo just makes a weird wild left and hits me, what about the passenger in the vehicle? I guess you probably can't sue like the passenger of a taxi or something.
Of course you can sue anyone, but you probably can't win. Yeah.
Right.
We do have examples of people leveraging the Tesla auto self-driving and getting into accidents, even killing people. And so far, they've gone after the driver, and you've not been able to transfer that liability onto the software. They try to sell.
So all you have to do is just have no driver.
Correct.
You get into the wreck, you have to climb into the back seat and be like, no one was driving.
Yeah.
Don't care for that.
Well, let me cheer you up.
One thing, but yeah, right. What's better than no people behind the wheel of a driving vehicle and the dangers therein?
Well, it's this heartwarming story about China and its killer robots that it's set to release onto the battlefield within the next 2 years. Now, honestly, this story looks like a kind of nonsense, but I don't know.
I've seen a video of the robot dog.
Yeah, the robot dogs with flamethrowers on their heads and
shooting.
machine guns. Oh, the flamethrower one was for home use, right? I'm trying to remember back. Yeah, that was the one anyone could buy.
That was a U.S. home use only. For entertainment purposes only. Whoosh, whoosh.
You were allowed to buy the one with the flamethrowers. Yeah. It's just the machine gun ones. They're currently...
Wasn't that even a U.S. video?
It was a U.S.
like
video.
A person has to be behind it, whereas this allegedly is China saying they're going to just full-on Terminator style. It just scans a person, decides that they're going down, and pulls the trigger itself.
In theory.
Which the West collectively, from everything that I've read so far, they're saying, line in the sand, it's not allowed to autonomously decide to kill that person. Even if it is a robot dog with a machine gun, at least there's a guy with an Xbox controller halfway across the world who's pulling the trigger at the end.
Yeah, I no longer find that line interesting because everyone is just making a decision based upon a bunch of data.
Mm-hmm.
And the only interesting question is who's ultimately responsible and how is that shifting? Like where does the blame shift? And is it shifting into the Waymo version where no one what happens when they're wrong?
I wasn't even thinking about who to blame. I was more thinking about World War III, when we have drones that are flying themselves without a person behind them, finding and eliminating targets, as opposed to a person has to be finding and pressing the button to drop the grenade or to shoot the gun or whatever.
I get that.
Speed would be extremely important on a future battlefield. So if presumably like one of the points, and they do kind of bring this up and they allude to it in the article, is the West going to fall behind by having to rely on a person interpreting data and pressing a button, as opposed to at the speed of miscalculation, a Chinese robot can just like, that's a person, and start blasting.
I personally doubt the West is holding back in that distinction.
Or they'll keep saying that they are, at least.
Sure. But so, like we know from now many years ago that there are these facilities where pilots go and they get satellite linked into planes around the world, and they fly those planes and they bomb people. And they're doing this based off of very imperfect information that's digitally transmitted over long distances. And they're given information that ultimately compounds together to suggest that, yes, pull the trigger. No, don't pull the trigger. But it's all just data. Like they're not someone who's actually there on the ground seeing the person. They're just processing a bunch of data. And so now we decide that, the robots can fly to the location and they can see the person and they can identify the person. They just can't pull the trigger. And now there's really just a person that just all they have is like one big red button, which is fire, right? Previously, they were flying and looking and they would just see a photograph, and then they were trying to reference it over with their like sheet of people that were approved to be terminated. But now we get back to just like there's a button that says fire. And now one of these pilots can press the fire button for up to 10 robots at a time. And they're given some sort of confidence score, and so once it's above 99%, they always hit fire. And so now you've seen the Tetris rollers. Do you know what I'm talking about? Tetris rolling. So no. All right, there's a world of competitive Tetris, and there was a new technique that came out within like just the last couple of years that allowed people to achieve crazy scores where they would like, I can't describe it well, but they would roll their fingers over the controller and like tap it on the back and whatever. They were able to get, just a few extra button taps. And so anyways, I just imagine these, assassinating rollers. Right. And so, all right, so now this
is the guy who's, swiping right on Tinder, where he just took a hot dog on like a rotating fan and gets it to.
The interview is how fast can you do this? We're going to test you. How fast can you tap the button? All right.
It's not how fast you can tap the button. It's the robot has been flying over. Here's the last 30 seconds.
Yes, but we need a human to tap the button at the end, because that's the part that's illegal. So the interview is just a bunch of people tapping buttons, and whoever gets the highest score, I got someone he can do 200 a second. 200 seconds.
It's not how many a second. It's how many of the right people did you press the button.
But they're all the right people, because it's just how the data is presented back to you. If the data can be presented back to you as it's the right person, but the distinction that at the end a human did this. And I don't think it's still interesting. What's interesting is who's ultimately responsible. Now, if it is the person who did this that's responsible, then I guess that keeps that person more interesting.
Sure.
But I suggest the technology
just like
has advanced to the point
can be held
it's
unreasonable
to hold the soldier
crimes.
Responsible at this point. Mm-hmm. Because
the
technology
just like
is too
Waymo,
much.
the company, do you have to then say, since there's no person on the battlefield, it's just that army or that government that's responsible at that point, like collectively?
Yeah, I think right now we're
ultimately in a war, isn't that kind of what it comes down to?
Yes. So right now we would still suggest that Waymo is probably the responsible party, but we are moving to the point where it has to be the government. And in the self-driving car world, my strong belief is that eventually the government will indemnify these companies. They'll say, no, you can't sue a Waymo. Waymo turns into oncoming traffic and mows over 25 kids. They have an indemnity. You cannot go after them because they're net good to humanity. Yes, they rolled over 12 kids, but they didn't roll over
14 kids.
14 kids. And
there were two sets of kids.
Years,
it's the trolley problem. There's 14 kids over here and 12 kids over here.
It's a net improvement. Look over the last 10 years. We've rolled over 150 kids. This year we only did 12.
Right.
So no
and
suing.
People would have done 300. And then you have to say, well, logical. That sucks, but I guess.
It's a net good for humanity. But now the suggestion is that will extend into the government and into wars where, yeah, sure.
You have to say it was a net good for humanity to wipe out that village of Yemeni children.
Correct. And so we're okay. The AI made some wrong decisions, but did you ever see what Bob did? And
we got him too.
Yeah, it's just inevitable.
As bleak. I think you're unfortunately right, but let the record show I find that a very bleak future. Weirdly, I don't find it bleak about the driving aspect. I think that is, once you can, and I've said this before, like, once you can show on the aggregate it would be safer than people, we should start filtering out human drivers because they're literally more of a menace on the road than people. But something about like, and we had this drone do its best to figure out who needed bombing, then we just let it go around bombing people. I don't like that one.
All right. And I can go back to my job as a writer and just enjoy the narrative word and kind of just relax in the peace of going in every day and writing.
Creatively writing
stories for people that really value them, because AI will never come for that.
Well, bad news.
What?
Yeah. So there is an editor who had a team of 60 people. Had a team of 60 people and stopped having a team of 60 people. Instead had a team of AI imitators of those 60 people writing things with all of the problems that we've already discussed that AI writing has, whether it be hallucinations or samey sort of prose. The idea, of course, is cut down on costs. Why spend money on these 60 people writing things when we have a robot that'll do some writing? And then that one person has way more work than they used to, and they feel overworked. And frankly, they're just being trained to be their own replacement as well at that point, which happened. This is, speaking of like good uses of technology that we kind of flip-flop between, this is not one of them. And a lot of companies keep doing this, and I don't think that they're going to stop. But I do think enough of them will have figured out that this is not the right way forward. I don't just mean from like a moral and ethical perspective. I mean in terms of not having bad content that people don't want to read because it's too lazy or too samey or too whatever. You go from 60 people actually writing, doing copywriting, and then now it's just one person having to do all that editing. A lot of stuff is making its way past the filter. This person's overworked. This person gets, I don't know if he got fired. I think he got dismissed and now is working at a firm aimed at making AI writing less detectable. Speaking of trying to put yourself out of a job again. I think that ChatGPT and similar technologies are extremely powerful tools. And just like when the hammer was first invented, people surely started using that hammer on stuff that it wasn't really the best use for. This is not the best use of this technology. People will keep using it like this, and when they screw around, they're going to find out, oh, our views, our whatever's tanked, we're losing subscribers and advertisers because of the quality having dropped precipitously. And then that company might go out of business, and those who survive are going to figure out how to use and be empowered by this technology instead of just like, we can just get rid of people with it. Some tasks, like classification of certain images or of text or of audio, is this phone call about someone who's upset? Is this article about financial news? Is this whatever? To like help sort things into buckets. Fantastic use of the technology. Let's not have people doing that. Writing articles. I know we've mentioned that even well before ChatGPT, even before generative AI as a thing, there were like Mad Lib style articles. Yeah. You could just plug in the results from an RSS feed and have an article in basically no time. And I think that works for like an article about sports scores or something. But if you're really trying to inform the public about something more nuanced, call me old fashioned, but I think humans are where it's at when it comes to that.
I'm going to call you old fashioned. So in this example, this company specialized in writing content for other companies. That was their, or let's just, do we know the type of content? Was that ever revealed what types of things they were writing?
No, it said copywriting. And it turns out I don't know what copywriting is.
Copywriting can be any kind of content.
Is copy just, it
could be a blog post.
It could just be writing?
Yeah. I mean, it could be ad copy, but it could be, I don't know, I probably think of like blog post type material. If I'm just imagining what it is that they're writing, it's probably not technical manuals. It's probably not press releases.
Copywriting, the activity or occupation of writing the text of advertisements or publicity material. So I'm a company.
Yeah.
And I want to advertise my new shoes that I made, or my new whatever the heck it is, service
AI
doing
shoes?
such and such. AI shoes.
LLM enabled.
And then I don't have a copywriter myself, and so I farm out the work and say, here's the marketing materials we have, and here's information about the product. Please write up a snappy one-pager that we can put online somewhere.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, and then they plug that into ChatGPT, and I have this one overworked guy, who they've since let go anyways, try and turn that into something a little more human-sounding. Maybe just use the humans in the first place. I think they're going to lose a lot of their job, not just from the bad publicity of this article, but from the quality of what's coming out of that process, because they're using this very powerful tool incorrectly.
I agree that the AI is not good enough yet to rip and replace, say, 60-person team of writers with a single API call, but I would suggest that the AI is good enough today to significantly downsize a 60-person team of writers to make them more efficient, to identify the types of things that they would identify in writing a press release, to identify the common formats of press release, to identify here are the facts and here's those facts formatted into a press release for you to review and to, polish up and then deliver, make them far more efficient. And
sure,
I think it's
but
highly
that's taking
plausible.
a person's job and making that job more efficient, which means you don't need the 60-person
Correct.
group. Maybe you only need 40 or 30 or 20, but you don't need
Less
0.
than 60.
Yeah, I think with the power of speeding things up and helping collate information, you don't need a 60-person copywriting team. But I think to say that this is a more than 60x transformation of capability, I think is not a correct statement. 1.5x, 2x, 3x, 5x maybe, but getting rid of 60 people down to 0, down to -1 because it was the 60 and the other guy atop them. I don't think that, it seems to not be working out for them. The article talks about how more errors were making through and that one remaining person was having trouble with how much everything looked the same. So,
well, I still remain highly skeptical of all the news where people talk about a large segment of people were let go under the premise that they're going to be replaced by AI. In today's news, it's I still spidey sense goes off, and I'm like, this was cost cutting. This company was suffering. They needed some way of cutting costs, and their solution was, well, Bob has a 60-person team. Let's cut them and see if we can replace them with ChatGPT. And maybe even they modeled in, look, we'll probably lose 2/3 of our business by doing this, but net that's break even, and it cuts our operating costs substantially. So our profit margin increases. And that's what it feels like to me is happening behind the scenes. Not that some, super bullish person said, look, I can get us an extra 5%. We're going to cut this. It's going to be incredible. And there's a big push and we got the whole company line behind it, and then they launched it and it failed. And this just feels like a dying company taking their, last breath.
Gasp, yeah.
But I do think in the future that 60-person team does go down to like a 2 or 3 person team. Let's say in the next 10 years, and it's probably less than that, but the next 10 years,
sure.
Given they don't do something else,
today that could have been from 60 down to 40 or 30.
Sure.
I think that would be doable. 3, 2, 1, 0. Yeah. 3 people, maybe 5 years from now. 0 people. Well, shoot. I mean, this technology has been getting so much better, so quickly. Maybe it is 1 year from now, 2 years from now.
I think I saw a headline today that TurboTax was laying off thousands of developers, and the headline was because they're going to be replaced by AI. But like, it's those types of headlines that are just like called BS on Instantly. First, there's no details there.
They were just looking for an excuse to cut costs.
Yeah, I mean, my assumption would be, the U.S. government has been making it easier and easier for people to electronically file directly with them. And I don't know, that's probably a good idea. I guess I could think about it longer to decide whether it is or not. But that's
taxes
cutting
in
out
general
business
should be easy enough for us to do.
Less people are going to need to use TurboTax in the future. There's going to be fewer customers. It's not. By the way, if it was AI, tell me something about this incredible AI that you have that is allowing you to let go of thousands of engineers. No,
I want an AI that knows all of the legal loopholes to make me not pay as much in the way of taxes. So sure, I guess. Give me that.
Yeah.
Speaking of good segues.
Okay. Are you going to start barking?
Yes. Well, no. So for context for the audience, I have a background in linguistics. And so I've always been interested in computational linguistics. That's how I got into this field. Supposedly, some of these AI scientists, I'm going to call them AI tech bros, frankly, at this point, are saying that they're coming up with tools to decode what your dog's barks mean. Before we get into the dogs thing, hey, Hunter, you ever been to a zoo?
I have been to a zoo.
Have you ever seen prairie dogs at a zoo? Not regular dogs, prairie dogs.
Probably, but I don't know.
They're adorable, and they kind of like sit up, and one of them's looking around, and there's a plaque by the prairie dogs at every zoo that's going to have prairie dogs, because it's one of the cool things about them is they have multiple kinds of barks. This bark means there's a hawk coming. This bark means there's tiger. I don't know. But like, they have multiple vocalizations that mean different things. You could call that language. Depending on the person you ask, it does.
I buy that.
Some people say things about whales possibly having some ability to communicate in maybe even like regional accents or the rough equivalents of like names.
Yeah. We should do a whole episode where we just speak in whale talk.
And then we have these guys translated to English. Yeah. So these animals aren't, this is very light editorializing on my point. It depends on who you talk to, but roughly speaking, barely roughly, fairly smoothly speaking, animals don't speak like people do. There's a couple of famous examples. You have like Coco the gorilla with the sign language. You have Alex the parrot with a very large vocabulary and had like one of the only like future thinking utterances by any non-human animal at any point. It was like, I'll see you tomorrow. That was like the last thing it said. It's heartbreaking. And I don't think Coco ever, you can look up, what Coco said and the kinds of things that were said. It was like there's nothing introspective or like asking about the internal state of another creature or asking about the future or the past. Whatever, like this one thing that's very easy for people to do, Coco never did. And Alex was very impressive and didn't do certain things. Dogs aren't. They're not that impressive. I've seen some very interesting videos of like a border collie, the probably smartest, certainly top tier of smartness for dogs, with like 30 buttons, and it presses this and like want, outside, treat, whatever. And 15 different buttons. I tried that with my beagle. He got exactly one of them. Treat, 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 treat.
But he did get the one. Treat. Like he learned the...
He knew this button gives, but I mean, it's the same thing as ringing a bell to go outside. And in fairness, he actually did have the outside button down as well, which he used anytime he wanted our attention instead of going outside. But anyways, dogs have vocalizations. They'll bark and they'll howl and they'll whine and so on. And certain vocalizations are more associated with certain things, like I'm whining, I'm in pain, or I'm hungry, or this. But like, they don't have the prairie dog level. This specific kind of whine means this one specific thing. And it isn't across all dogs, or across all of that breed, or across all of that city of dogs, or whatever it ends up being. And these scientists, to finally get back to the actual article here, are saying that they're going to look at dog vocalizations for age and breed and sex of the dogs to like, oh, maybe female dogs talk more about handbag toys. Like, I don't know what it is that they're going to be going for. I'm asserting right now that they're trying to get some money and cash in on an AI craze, and that this is not going anywhere. You might be able to, oh, it barked. It's trying to draw your attention to something. Yeah, that's what a bark is. Or, oh, it's whining. It's in some sort of distress about something. I know, it's whining. Dogs don't have the depth of vocalization. They're suggesting that they do. I am very much suggesting that they do not. To be like an English 2 dog, especially not just for an individual dog, but for all of that breed, or all of that age, breed, sex of that dog. Like, oh, all female Doberman pinchers over the age of 6 sound like this when they're hungry. That's not going to happen. All right, now I'm done barking at you about it. What do you think? Do you think that we can teach dogs to bark into your Rabbit R1 once they unbrick it, and it's going to be able to tell you what your dog is thinking? So
the question is, are dogs communicating through words alone, through barks alone? No, we're dismissing I guess the intonation can be part of the meaning.
They say dog barks, so this isn't body language or any of the other nonverbal cues that are very important to understanding animal behavior.
Right, but the intonation is part of the verbal cue, right?
Sorry, yes, intonation is, but this is like flattening of ears, or the hackles are up, or the tail is wagging, or the whatever's facing forward, or this or that. The nonverbal stuff.
I agree that I don't hear enough distinction in the barks to believe that there is a full language behind it. And so I guess it would have to be so subtle that, perhaps our ears can't detect it. That there's actually a million of very small variations through this rough.
I've been listening to my Australian Shepherd for almost 14 years now. And when she rubs her 2 brain cells together, whenever somebody comes over to the house, friend or foe, she's going to bark at them exactly the same way. That's it. She barks because someone's at the door and invading the human's space or whatever. I don't think that she's going to bark and then my Alexa is going to say, your dog is thinking this about that person.
But we do agree that a dog could, potentially recognize 100 different barks. If we're going to, this type of bark means this type of barks, because we could train a dog to recognize 100 different words. Sure. That's not an insane idea.
And dogs or other like canids, I think, listen to and respond differently to certain kinds of barks or howls. I think it's coyotes, when they howl and they hear other ones howl, it will actually affect their rate of reproduction by how many others that they hear nearby. It's like a way of polling the neighborhood, like, hey, is the population too high here? Woo, woo. Oh, I heard 30 other coyotes. Well, no pups this year.
That it's really both a physical and a cognitive limit. Physically, the tonal range that they can represent over these barks is incredibly limited, so they don't have a lot to work with. And cognitively, they don't have the processing power to figure out how to encode multiple words into this very limited range. Of course, we could have just a single tone and encode every single word into that by Morse code. But
right, we're not going to teach dogs to bark in Morse code.
Correct.
I do think for some of the really smart ones, because they know this button means I get to play with that toy, or this button is I get water, or this button means I get a walk after. Like, you could teach a dog to encode certain, especially like very high level desires into something that we could then interpret, but they're not getting it via barks.
Now, is there a future where, so we've said that dogs could understand 100 words. That's plausible. We could teach them that. And dogs could potentially communicate through all sorts of things, 100 different words, but we need to take in all of their different body movements, their posture, their
right. And so you're saying a dog does a dance in front of
and then there's a
the rabbit
communication
R3
layer that then communicates that into the other dog. Like maybe dogs want to talk with each other, and we can build the system that translates between them through this sort of shared language.
It can maybe be a fun little thing with a red light on it on a collar, like from the movie.
If that's truly their limitation. Their limitation is in both the physical expressing, generating the tones, and the cognitive load of encoding.
Right.
Well, we can handle those two parts with technology. If they can truly receive the message, that's plausible. I don't see why that's not plausible.
One of the pieces of this I think is plausible and is highly unethical to implement. In humans, there's a gene called FOXP2, which is highly correlated with the development of speech and language. If you're missing this gene, you will not learn to speak like normal neurotypical people.
Okay.
With CRISPR and the like, presumably, probably not in a country that has, strict ethical and moral checks for this kind of thing. You could take some dogs and you could put that gene in there, assuming that it expressed correctly, that was at the right place in the genome. I literally have no idea how this stuff works, but if you were to take that gene and get it to work in other animals, I assert that would take any animal and vastly improve their ability to understand and possibly produce, whether it be speech or like other utterances that could be meaningful. So on the interpretability side, if there is a consistent set of signals that a creature could make,
right,
knowing that it is making them with intent to communicate, we could absolutely train an AI to take video of a dog doing a very special dance and be like, he's doing the hamburger dance.
Well, I think you uncovered the actual path, which is just Neuralink chips. So we implant the Neuralink chip into the dog's brain, which
the dog
detects.
Would, though, still have, like, the dogs don't have the capability for language like we do. I'm saying that is like a literal genetic level problem. It's not just the actual reading of the mind.
Right, but the dog wants to go
Neuralink
outside.
Chip could do that.
And so the dog knows it's going to do its song and dance about going outside in order to communicate to the human it wants to go outside. Mm-hmm. The brain should theoretically be able to recognize this order of signals coming into it, suggesting, okay, start shaking the behind.
Sure, right.
Head to the door, do a little bark, whatever. And okay, so now the Neuralink chip has detected dog wishes to go outside. And
yes, I do think that like we are at the cusp of that technology being here, but I don't want a chip in my dog's head. Just give them the button and let them press the button.
Well, the interesting thing is if you can put a chip in another dog's head and now these two dogs can communicate with each other.
Are they communicating what is now effectively telepathically? So they don't even have to say anything. You just come into a room where two dogs are looking at each other and then they like in unison turn their heads to look at you, and it's like out of a horror movie. You see a little, it's got to be a fun little antenna coming out of the top of the head and it goes beep, 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 beep.
All right, we'll give you the beep, 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 beep.
Yeah.
All right, but yes, we enable them, and I guess we're really creating something new at that point. It's a new being. Because there are limitations of a dog in its cognitive ability,
right,
in its vocal abilities, and we're suggesting, okay, what if I augmented this dog to give it enhanced cognition, to give it an enhanced vocal range, and to provide some translation software so that these animals could communicate. I mean, we've created a new, it's a hybrid animal, but a new animal at that point.
Cyborg.
Sure.
Side dog? Borg dog?
Maybe this isn't a great idea. They might become a little too self-aware.
And then we put machine guns on top of the dogs. They don't even need to be robot dogs, just partially robot dogs that can understand us better.
Well, if you enjoyed these stories, we aren't great at transitions here. We're working on it. We're going to need to. We actually did at one point leverage ChatGPT to try to generate some transitions. I stopped that. We fired our team of 60 people that were writing all of our transitions.
Right. Yeah.
And had
hired 61 others. Yeah.
Maybe we should go back to the script because I think we're failing here. But you've been listening to episode 22. They might be self-aware, where we continue to challenge the status quo. of whether dogs can or cannot communicate with each other, and everything else on this inevitable path we are headed on towards, I guess it's everything becoming self-aware or not, including your LLM enabled shoes. But we will be back next week with more hard-hitting stories, topics, and introspection. So hit that subscribe button so you can be notified just as soon as we have something to say. We are available on every major podcasting platform and YouTube, wherever you're watching us, listening to us right now. That's probably the easiest place to hit the subscribe button. But if not, search for us on your favorite platform and you will probably find us. Give us a subscribe, give us a like, leave a comment,
Thumbs
and we
up,
will
5 stars.
we'll read it on the show. 5 stars, 4 stars, 3.5 stars.
Are we still doing half stars?
No, it rounds up, so it's actually 4 stars.
Okay.
All right, until next time.
They might be self-aware.